Last week, we talked about how to upgrade your identity, and we were talking about the question of how do you do that? Today, we're going to just get into that a little bit more. How do you upgrade your identity? Welcome to the What Could Go Right podcast. My name is Erik Orton.
I'm Emily Orton.
And here we talk about personal growth, family connection, and raising adult kids, and sailing, let's be honest. Okay. We're just kind of rehashing or revisiting this book, Atomic Habits by James Clear. My word for the year this year is atomic, and so it's fitting.
My words are reset and refine. So I think it's also fitting when we're talking about upgrading.
All right. And you're already so refined.
These have been great words because I'm always doing it, right? Like if I try something and I fall off and my word is reset, hey, I am doing my word. It's very encouraging.
I've always thought you were fine. And now you're just like, refine. Okay, so I'm on page 36. If you've got a hard copy, your identity emerges out of your habits. You are not born with preset beliefs. Every belief, including those about yourself, is learned and conditioned through experience. He talks about the Latin word that we use for identity was originally derived from essentitas, which means being, and identidem, which means repeatedly. So repeated beingness. I'm going to jump down. This is page 37. Your habits are not the only actions that influence your identity, but by virtue of their frequency, they are usually the most important ones. Each experience in life modifies your self-image, but it's unlikely you consider yourself a soccer player because you kicked a ball once, or an artist because you scribbled a picture. As you repeat these actions, however, the evidence accumulates and your self-image begins to change. The effect of one-off experiences tends to fade away, while the effect of habits gets reinforced with time, which means your habits contribute most of the evidence that shapes your identity. In this way, the process of building habits is actually the process of becoming yourself. All right, so we're going to loop back to some of this in a minute, but
I love it. I already want to push back just a little bit.
Okay, push back. Let's have this debate, this conversation.
Just some additional context. As the mother of 5, I definitely don't believe that these kids come as a blank slate. There's just things about their personality that are not put into them by us or the environment that they're in. There's some things that I truly believe they just come with. And I do agree, though, that as they decide what they want to participate in and how they want to show up in the world, those habits can create an identity that way. And sometimes it can happen by default without much thinking. And I like how we're talking about giving it a little more thought. And the second thing I would want to push back on is the idea that if you only do it one time, you don't necessarily consider your identity. And I would say one exception to that is our youngest daughter, Lily.
Oh, she's the best and the worst.
Who has Down syndrome, and she has a unique perspective on the world and on her identity. And she can see somebody else doing something and immediately identify as that way. So for example, the first time we were in California and we saw surfers, her first time ever seeing surfers, she immediately said, "Oh, I am a surfer. Like I'm a surfer girl."
And she proceeded to wade out into the water in her swimsuit. Like she's going to go take one of their boards.
Yeah, I'm ready to step into my
destiny. I'm ready to do what they're doing because that's what I am.
And if she can say like 4 words in Spanish, she tells people, "I speak Spanish," but she does technically speak Spanish words. I wouldn't call it the same thing, and maybe other people wouldn't agree with her, but she thinks she speaks like 4 languages, and she thinks she's like a World Cup champion soccer player because she watched Brazil last year. So anyway, I actually love her as a case study and an example. The one thing that I do think is true about everybody that's born is that we do not come into the world insecure. I think we're born confident and we learn insecurity as we move through the world. And we're just hopefully through some of James Clear's ideas we can learn how to reclaim some of that confidence on purpose.
Well, let me read a little bit more here because he talks about, because I think confidence is actually the key. Before I read more, I'm going to say this. I think what habits do is they either create or they restore our confidence. Because when we get in the habit of doing something, we start to believe ourselves. I mean, you and I talk about this all of the time when we talk about three kinds of confidence. There's competence, credibility, and calm. And the credibility one is when you do what you say you will do, trust arrives. People trust you when you say what you're going to do. More importantly, you trust yourself. And I think when I trust myself, I believe myself, and I'm able to accept things about myself, about my identity,
And move forward.
and move forward.
I had took a breath because I do have one more thing to say. If you heard I have something to say. Before you get into the next thing you're going to read from James Clear in Atomic Habits, is that, the idea is kind of escaping me now.
You took a breath.
I know.
It all started with a breath. Can you tell we don't rehearse this? We do, like, these are not
This is
planned
real
practice
life.
podcasts. It's just
But
like
it's about, you
we
were
hit
talking
record.
about confidence,
Competence,
and
credibility,
habits.
and calm. Habits. People trust you. You trust yourself. She's thinking.
It was about the repeatability of it.
Okay.
And that is that a lot of people say it takes 21 days to form a habit. And I know what you just read from James Clear, he's talking about over time. And I do believe that it typically occurs over time. But I did hear from another success expert, which if I think of it, I'll put in the show notes. But if I don't, you'll just have to take it as a grain of salt or as a gold nugget of truth. But that we actually establish habits based on the success feeling that we get from the habit. And so if you really want a habit to stick, acknowledge it as a win every time that you do it, and be like, hey, I did what I said I was going to do. Good for me. Like whatever it was, large or small habit that you're trying to change, that it's actually the feeling of success that makes us want to keep repeating it over time. Just doing it 21 days in a row doesn't build it into our identity.
So just feeling successful reinforces that the feeling of success reinforces the habit more than than just hitting a certain number.
Yeah, and I think it's true even for bad habits, right? Like for me, it's that handful of chocolate at 3:45. Maybe later I don't like how it feels, but in that moment, I'm like, oh yeah, I love having this chocolate right now. I get my little dopamine hit. Probably going to do this again tomorrow.
Okay. So reading a little back to story time. Putting this all together is page 38. You can see that habits are the path to changing your identity. The most practical way to change who you are is to change what you do. Each time you write a page, you are a writer. Each time you practice the violin, you are a musician. Each time you start a workout, you are an athlete. Each time you encourage your employees, you are a leader. Each habit not only gets results, but also teaches you something far more important: to trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You start to believe you can actually accomplish these things. When the votes mount up and the evidence begins to change, the story you tell yourself begins to change as well. And I love this idea of mounting evidence because I think one of the reasons I'll talk myself out of things that I'll say I'm this, but I'm not that, because I have a lot of evidence to prove to prove both cases. And the great thing about Lily, our daughter, is that she doesn't need any evidence. She's just like, I am this thing because the idea has occurred to me.
Mm-hmm.
And for us lesser mortals, we need a little bit more reassurance. And I would aspire to have her level of confidence. But I just like this idea. And the thing is, and he talks a lot about votes and democracy and things like that. And he says, to win, you don't need to be perfect. You don't need a unanimous vote to win an election. You need a majority.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you do something more times than you don't do it, you're probably going to believe yourself anyway. But if you don't do something more than you do it, I don't know if I'm saying that very
If
clearly.
you do something the majority of the time,
that's the story you're going to believe.
then you win as far as that being part of your identity.
And so
that wins a spot in your identity.
I talk about this a lot. I track how many words I write every day. I have a lot of zeros, but I can look back on 8 years of data to see all the days that I wrote, all the days that I didn't write, all the words that I've written. And I've written millions of words. I believe I'm a writer because I have evidence that backs it up. Am I going to continue to be a writer? I plan to. I'm doing a little bit more talking than writing these days, which is fine. But there's something powerful about the evidence and having the evidence for yourself so that you can't deny it. You can't lie to yourself. In fact, I got this whole idea from who's the author? The adventure author guy from like the 30s and 40s.
I know who you're talking about. We'll come back to it.
Come back in the comments if you know who we're talking.
You might be over 50 if. Hey.
Anyway, he's one of these famous authors that you read in English classes, and he said he would track his writing every day as to not fool himself, because we can trick ourselves into thinking that we're something that we're not, and we can also talk ourselves out of believing that we are something that we actually are. So build a case for yourself. Build evidence. Are you looking at
Hemingway?
It was Ernest Hemingway. He's the adventure author. Hemming and hawing my way to
the answer.
To answers. Okay. New identities require new evidence. If you keep casting the same votes you've always cast, you're going to get the same results you've always had. If nothing changes, nothing is going to change. Okay, and this is where he gives the two-step process for changing your identity. So you ready for this? Pull out your pencils. This is the simple two-step process. 1, decide the type of person you want to be. 2, prove it to yourself with small wins. Step 1 is decide the type of person you want to be. And step 2 is prove it to yourself with small wins. And Emily and I are big believers in small wins, the importance of just taking atomic microscopic actions that are easy to do, easy, like painfully easy wins. And our favorite example of this is to get fit. Our goal is we're going to put on our shoes and step outside. That's where we started. Put on our walking shoes. Well, they were, I guess any shoes, but putting on your shoes and walking out, stepping outside, that was our first step. And I'm like, well, we're here. We might as well
cross the street.
Cross the street. Anyway, and it builds from there. You've heard us talk about this before, perhaps. But making it just so easy to succeed. And then every day we'd put on our shoes and step outside. It's a win every day. And everything beyond that is just extra. And then we created credibility with ourselves. And here we are, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years later, we went for a walk again today, like we do every day, because it's our habit. It's who we are. We walk in the morning.
And we feel a benefit from it.
I love it.
So
I love it.
Yeah.
One of my favorite parts of the day.
I like what you're saying. Last week, we talked more about belief and how behavior follows belief, but it sounds like there's actually a circular relationship, whether you're going to start with belief or you're going to start with behavior. Those will really affect each other, and they need to keep repeating. The belief needs to keep repeating, and the behavior needs to keep repeating to really establish that as your upgraded identity, for it to become a paved road instead of, the first time off-roading through, the brush or something. It becomes established through repetition, the belief and the behavior.
And I just love this idea that you trust yourself. And, when we teach about credibility and how the size of your dreams is proportionate to the amount that you trust yourself. Mm-hmm. As you trust yourself in more and more areas of your life and at bigger and bigger scales, the the scope of things that you will let yourself contemplate and consider for yourself grows in proportion to that level of trust. So when you don't trust yourself, when you don't believe that you're going to pay the bills or stick to your
Drink enough water,
eating plan,
whatever it
or
is.
whatever it is. But when you do, then you say, okay, if I can do that, what else can I do? And that's where the magic starts to happen. And so if you're feeling discouraged and you're feeling like nothing that you're doing is working, find a small, simple way to find success. And James Clear, he talks about, look, you know, if you need to, one of the ways that we start building trust with ourselves when we're young is, let's just say you learn to tie your shoes. You learn to tie your shoes and you do that every day and it becomes automatic and you just know you can do it. You don't even think about, can I tie my shoes? It's just part of who you are. Once you learn how to tie your shoes, if you can do that, what else can you do? And just go up from there. And I think we're always looking for bigger and bigger puzzles to solve, bigger and bigger challenges, because if you have a growth mindset, and I think
If you're here, you probably do.
If you do, if you're here, you probably do. And if you don't, I believe you can get one if you decide that you want to be a growth minded person. So anyway, that's it. I think it's important to trust yourself, because the more you trust yourself, the bigger your dreams become, and the more rich, full, satisfying, happy, fun, and beneficial your life becomes. That's my take on it.
I agree with you. No pushback.
No pushback?
For the first
Okay.
time in this episode, no pushback.
Awesome. Well, hey, guys, thanks for listening. Atomic Habits, that's what we're talking about. And what could go right?
What could go right is if you're interested in trying something new, something different, maybe you have a little experience but not much, you may want to find out what it's like to live on a sailboat. We did it for a whole year with our 5 kids, and now we help other people cross that threshold, see yourself in a new way, learn some new skills, go to some new places, kind of stretch and grow in the most fun, friendly way possible, and come see what it's like to try living on a sailboat for a week. And Eric will teach you everything that you want to know about living on a sailboat, about how a sailboat runs. By the end of most weeks, the crew is running the sailboat because they have learned how to steer, how to navigate, how to raise and lower sails, how to raise and drop anchor, all the things. And I make your meal plan, so all you have to do is follow the recipe, and it's been life-changing for some of these people, just a complete reset for the second half of life and making new friends and just opening up new horizons. So if you're ready to upgrade your identity,
it's a great way to upgrade your identity. I'll probably throw in some videos from previous sailing trips in here so you can hear what people have to say on their own. But it really, if you want to fill in the blank and says, I'm the type of person that sails or goes sailing,
tries new things.
I'm the type of person that is adventurous or curious. This might be part of what you want to look at. So anyway, you go to the show notes and there will be a link there where you can chat with us. I like to talk with everybody that's interested in coming on a trip and answer all your questions. And if one of our trips later this year or early 2025 is a fit, then we could go sailing together, which would be cool. All right, thanks for listening.
First of all, what made you want to come on this trip? Actually, that's a new question.
Oh gosh, it's like all the stars aligned and things just kind of worked out, and it's something I've always wanted to try, and just kind of get out of my comfort zone and go for it.
I love it. I'm so happy you did, Melissa. And thanks for trusting me. Seriously,
Yes.
like pretty much
Thank
a stranger,
you.
right?
Yeah, it was such a wonderful experience.
All right. So, what were some of your favorites? Some highlights?
Favorites. Just sailing wide open on with the sails up, in the open ocean. And I loved getting to see the sea lions in person instead of just on TV in their natural environment.
That was cool.
That was a lot of fun.
That was. Okay, if you were picking 3 words to describe this trip, what would you say?
Gosh, dreamy, very challenging, but worth it, and gosh, just unbelievable. It was a wonderful experience. The highlight of my year so far.